I want you to imagine a really specific scenario for a second. You are standing in the middle of this sprawling, sun-drenched park on a Saturday morning.
Oh yeah, the classic perfect weekend setup.
Right, exactly. You've had a long, stressful week, but right now, the air is crisp, the coffee in your hand is just perfect, and your dog is trotting happily by your side.
Sounds pretty idyllic.
It really does.
Uh,
So you scan the field, it looks completely empty, and you make this split-second calculation, reach down and unclip the leash.
and for a few glorious minutes, it is absolute perfection.
It is. Your dog is sniffing the grass, exploring, enjoying a taste of real freedom. You feel like a fantastic pet owner. But then a subtle shift happens.
The wind changes direction.
Yes. Your dog's ears pin forward. Their body goes completely rigid. Muscles tense up. Across the field, a squirrel darts up the trunk of a massive oak tree. Before your brain can even process the change in their posture, your dog just launches forward. They are gone. Sprinting at full speed, totally ignoring your shouts, heading dangerously close to a line of thick woods that borders a very busy street.
That is terrifying.
Your stomach completely drops out. You scream their name. You yell every single command you know. Will they hit the brakes and turn around? Or are you completely invisible to them in that moment?
That visceral plunge in your stomach, that sudden, chilling realization that you have absolutely zero control over a chaotic environment. I mean, that is a universal nightmare for dog owners.
It really is.
In a fraction of a second, the entire dynamic between you and your dog is put to the ultimate test. The illusion of control we have on a 6-foot leash just shatters. Everything hinges on one highly complex behavioral response that we wildly underestimate until the exact moment it fails us.
We assume because they sit for a piece of cheese in the kitchen, they'll stop chasing a wild animal in an open field. But the stakes are completely different.
Completely.
And that terrifying gap between what we expect our dogs to do and what they actually do in high-stress situations is the core of our deep dive today. We are breaking down a meticulously detailed guide from Doggozilla magazine by Simon Tracy. It's titled, "What Happens When Dog Recall Training Fails? Crucial Advice."
It's an incredible resource.
Yeah, so our mission today is to dissect the underlying psychology of why our dogs suddenly go deaf to our voices, look at the actual mechanical step-by-step process of rebuilding that broken communication, and explore the fascinating genetic history that gives certain breeds a massive head start.
The premise of Tracy's analysis really reframes the entire concept of recall because, people often treat it as a convenience, like a neat trick so they don't have to walk across the muddy yard to fetch their dog.
Right, like fetching the remote.
Exactly. But this guide positions a solid recall as a fundamental life-saving mechanism. It is the absolute, non-negotiable barrier between a dog's freedom and potential tragedy.
It's literally a safety belt.
Yes. If you cannot call your dog off a moving car or away from another aggressive dog or, toxic garbage on the street, they are fundamentally unsafe off-leash. We have to deconstruct this behavior from the neurological ground up.
So I want to start right at the foundational layer the guide establishes because it challenges a very human assumption. The absolute prerequisite for recall isn't a command at all.
No, it's not.
It is name recognition. Before you can ever hope your dog will abandon a squirrel to return to you, they have to actually care that you are generating a sound in their direction. But we project so much human identity onto our pets.
We constantly anthropomorphize them.
Yeah, we name them Fido or Bella or Winston, and we just assume they adopt that as their personal identity, like they possess an ego attached to that specific word.
But they really don't. A dog doesn't possess a self-concept tied to a human linguistic label. They don't have an internal monologue saying, I am Winston, therefore I must respond.
That's so funny to picture, though.
Right. But to the canine brain, a name is purely an auditory cue. It is a specific sequence of phonetic sounds that they learn to associate with a reliable consequence. The auditory processing center of their brain simply categorizes sounds by their predictive value.
So like the sound of the treat bag.
Exactly. The sound of a cheese wrapper crinkling has high predictive value. The sound of your voice saying their name needs to have an even higher predictive value.
So when the text instructs owners to teach the name by using an upbeat tone and immediately rewarding the dog with a high-value treat the exact second they make eye contact, we are introducing them to themselves.
No.
We are programming a reflex.
You are building a dopamine pathway. The sound hits the ear, the brain predicts something fantastic is about to happen, and the head turns to locate the source of that impending reward. That is why the initial repetitions are so critical.
You have to make it worth their while.
You have to establish the name as the most powerful, positive magnet in the dog's auditory environment.
But here is a fascinating trap the guide warns against, and I guarantee almost every person listening has fallen into it at some point. It says, we must avoid using the dog's name in a negative or scolding manner.
Oh, this is a big one.
The implication is that if we do, we ruin the association. But I am trying to map this onto normal human behavior, you know? When the dog is shredding a couch cushion, the immediate human reflex is to yell, "Winston, no!"
Of course it is.
So how are we supposed to correct a dog without addressing them by the very label we use to communicate with them? I mean, we naturally want to yell their name when they're bad.
We have to decouple the correction from the auditory cue we need for their safety. Think of the name as a highly sensitive bank account.
Okay, I like that.
Every time you say the name and reward them, you make a deposit. Every time you use the name to scold them or drag them away from a fun smell or signal the end of playtime, you are making a massive withdrawal.
Wow.
So if you yell, "Winston, stop chewing the couch,"
Hmm.
you are attaching that sound to your anger, your aggressive body language, and a negative consequence.
So the cue just becomes completely ambiguous to them. Sometimes Winston means cheese, and sometimes Winston means the human is having a total meltdown.
And that ambiguity is the death of recall. If the cue is unpredictable, the dog's brain performs a micro-risk assessment every time they hear it.
They're doing math in their head.
They really are. They're thinking, is she calling me because we are going for a walk, or is she calling me because she found the trash can I knocked over? If there is even a 10% chance it's the latter, a dog running loose in a park is going to opt out.
They'll just ignore you.
They will simply pretend they didn't hear you. The name must remain sacred. It must exclusively predict positive engagement.
That requires a huge paradigm shift for the owner, honestly. We have to essentially invent a new vocabulary for discipline, like a sharp ah-ah or a generic hey to interrupt the bad behavior, leaving the name completely out of the negative interaction.
It's harder than it sounds.
It makes me realize that half of dog training is just suppressing our own natural human communication instincts.
It absolutely is. You are learning a foreign language where the grammar is based entirely on associative learning and immediate consequences.
So if we successfully protect the name, and the dog develops that whiplash reflex and is snapping their attention to us every time we say it, the guide suggests we are ready to introduce the actual action command, the come or here.
Right, the movement phase.
But the environmental setup for this phase seems incredibly specific in the article. We aren't supposed to start at the park. We have to start in a sterile environment, like a quiet living room with zero distractions.
Yes, very deliberate.
Why is the geography so important if the dog already knows their name?
Because we are dealing with a brain that processes sensory information hierarchically, and sound is rarely at the top of that hierarchy for a dog.
Oh, interesting.
A dog's olfactory bulb, the part of the brain analyzing smells, is roughly 40 times larger than ours relative to total brain size. Their visual processing for movement is highly acute. When a dog is actively smelling a patch of grass or watching a bird, their threshold for auditory processing actually changes.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The brain actively filters out background noise to focus on the primary sensory input.
So it isn't stubbornness. It isn't a willful act of defiance when they ignore you. They are experiencing a literal sensory override.
Defiance implies a complex moral calculation that dogs simply do not possess. They are responding to the most salient stimulus in their environment.
That makes so much sense.
If you try to introduce a brand new, weak auditory command like come, while their brain is completely hijacked by the scent of a raccoon, you are setting the behavior up to fail before it even begins. You start in the living room because you need to be the only interesting thing happening.
You have to be the main event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You build the neural pathway in a vacuum where success is guaranteed.
And success in this vacuum involves a heavy, heavy paycheck. The guide stresses using extremely yummy treats or highly engaging toys. This introduces the concept of outcompeting the environment.
The canine economy.
Yes, because even as we move from the living room to the backyard, we are stepping into a marketplace of distractions.
Every stimulus in the environment has a perceived value. A leaf blowing across the patio might be worth $1 to them. A neighbor's dog barking next door might be worth $20. Your job is to accurately appraise the value of the distraction and ensure the reward in your hand is worth significantly more.
This reminds me of an analogy about motivation. If someone taps you on the shoulder and offers you a single dollar to stop playing your favorite video game, you're going to ignore them.
Of course.
The interruption just isn't worth the reward. But if they offer you $100 to put the controller down, you drop it immediately. The activity didn't change, but the economic calculation did.
That's a perfect analogy.
We have to be the $100 for our dogs. If we bring dry, boring kibble to a park full of squirrels, we are offering nickels to a dog who is currently hunting for $100 bills.
And the failure of most recall training happens in that exact miscalculation. Owners decide what the reward should be based on their own convenience. Like, I have these dry biscuits in my pocket, the dog should want them.
But the dog gets a vote.
The dog gets the only vote. The value of the reward is determined exclusively by the learner, not the teacher. You have to find your dog's currency. For a food-motivated dog, it might be small pieces of hot dog or freeze-dried liver. For a high-drive dog, food might be totally irrelevant compared to a game of tug with a specific rope toy.
Finding that ultimate currency seems like the key to the next phase, the guide outlines, which is adding distractions and increasing distance. We are deliberately exposing the dog to higher value environments and proving that our paycheck is still better.
Incrementally, yes.
But the guide includes a warning about consistency here. It says you can eventually fade out the constant treats, but you can never fade out the praise.
Right, you are shifting from a continuous schedule of reinforcement to a variable schedule.
Like a vending machine versus a slot machine.
Precisely. Initially, a vending machine must deliver a soda every single time you put a coin in, or you stop using it entirely. But once a behavior is deeply ingrained, you can switch to a slot machine model.
Which keeps people and dogs hooked.
The slot machine doesn't pay out every time you pull the lever, but the anticipation that it might pay out keeps the behavior strong. However, the emotional validation, the enthusiastic verbal praise must always be present. The dog needs to know they performed the correct action, even if the jackpot is withheld for that specific repetition.
The slot machine analogy clarifies a lot. It keeps the dog gambling on the recall. But let's look at what happens when the casino goes totally bankrupt.
Let's do it.
The guide dives deep into the diagnostics of recall failure. Why do dogs blow us off when it really matters? We've touched on the weak foundations and the low-value rewards. But there is one diagnostic reason listed that I found genuinely distressing because it highlights a massive, tragic miscommunication between humans and dogs.
I know exactly which one you mean.
It cites bad past experiences like getting scolded after coming back as a primary destroyer of the recall command.
This is the intersection of human emotional fragility and a fundamental misunderstanding of canine memory. To grasp why scolding a returning dog is so profoundly destructive, we have to look closely at classical conditioning and the physical limitations of a dog's associative memory window.
So map this out for me, because I think this is a huge light bulb moment. Let's say a dog slips the leash at a hiking trail. They disappear into the brush.
A total nightmare scenario.
Right. The owner spends 30 agonizing minutes searching, panicking, picturing the absolute worst-case scenarios. Finally, the dog comes trotting out of the bushes, perfectly fine, tongue lolling out, happy as a clam.
And the owner's sheer terror instantly metastasizes into intense anger.
Exactly. The adrenaline dump the human experiences is massive. The relief triggers an immediate release of frustration. So the owner grabs the dog's collar, leans over them aggressively, and yells, "Where were you? Do you have any idea how scared I was? Bad dog."
It's such a natural human reaction.
In the human's mind, they are referencing the 30 minutes of absence. They are punishing the act of running away.
But the dog doesn't have a concept of the last 30 minutes in a narrative sense. They aren't reflecting on their journey through the woods.
They aren't thinking, "Wow, I really shouldn't have chased that deer."
No, not at all. A dog's associative memory, their ability to connect a specific action to an immediate consequence, operates in a window of approximately 1 to 2 seconds.
1 to 2 seconds. That is incredibly short.
It is. So when you scold that dog, you are not punishing the act of running away. You are punishing the exact physical behavior they were performing 1 second prior to your yelling. And what was that behavior?
Approaching the owner, making contact.
Precisely. You have just fiercely penalized the dog for the act of returning to you. From the dog's perspective, running through the woods was an incredibly reinforcing, highly rewarding experience. But the exact moment they decided to return to their human, the human transformed into a threatening, unpredictable monster.
That is just heartbreaking when you look at it from their perspective.
The lesson the dog learns is crystal clear. The environment is safe and fun, but the human is dangerous. Never go back to the human.
By giving in to our own emotional relief and anger, we're actively training the dog to avoid us in an emergency. The self-discipline required here is staggering.
It takes immense control.
You are telling me and telling you, the listener, that if a dog puts you through absolute hell for an hour, ignores your screams, and finally casually wanders back, you have to suppress every natural human instinct, regulate your nervous system, and throw a joyful party with high-value treats.
It is arguably one of the most difficult psychological tests of dog ownership. You have to act like a stoic. You're not rewarding the hour of bad behavior. You are heavily reinforcing the final, crucial choice they made to return.
You have to celebrate that choice.
Yes. If you want that choice to ever happen again, you must make the arrival the best part of their day. If you poison the arrival with anger, you shatter the trust required for off-leash reliability.
Okay, so what is the protocol for the owner who is listening right now and just realized they've been doing this wrong for years? The well is poisoned. The command is broken. The guide actually moves into a systematic reboot under actionable training tips, and the first piece of advice is wonderfully blunt. Teach it from scratch.
Don't try to fix the broken word.
Exactly. Why is it so important to abandon the old command?
Because the auditory cue itself carries the emotional baggage. If the word come has been associated with frustration, leash yanking, or scolding, the neural pathway is corrupted. It will always trigger a degree of hesitation in the dog.
It's tainted.
You have to abandon the word. You select a brand new cue, hear, return, touch, or even a specific two-tone whistle. You start over in that sterile living room we talked about, treating the dog as if they have zero prior knowledge of the concept.
A completely clean slate. And to bridge the gap between the living room and the dangerous outdoors, the guide introduces a really specific mechanical tool. The long leash.
Crucial tool.
It stresses using a long line to control the dog while gradually increasing distance and distractions. But how does this actually work in practice? Because people often buy these 30-foot leashes and just end up tangling themselves, or worse, clotheslining their dog when they run.
The physical mechanics of a long line are vital, you're right. First, a long line should ideally be attached to a well-fitted harness, not a neck collar.
That makes sense.
You have to prevent cervical injury if the dog hits the end of the line at full speed. Second, and this is where most people fail, the long line is not a fishing rod. You do not use it to physically reel the dog in while shouting the command.
Because if you reel them in, they aren't making a choice. You are just forcing physical compliance.
Exactly. The long line is a safety net and an environmental management tool. You let the dog drag the line in a park. You say your new recall word once. If the dog ignores you and continues walking away, you simply step firmly on the line.
You just anchor it.
You stop their forward momentum. You prevent them from self-rewarding by getting closer to the distraction. You hold the tension and wait. The moment the dog realizes they can't move forward, they will usually look back at you in confusion.
Like, hey, why did we stop?
Right. And the second they turn their head and relieve the tension on the line, you explode with praise, lower your body posture to appear welcoming, and encourage them to close the distance.
So you are creating a puzzle where the only solution that results in forward movement or a reward is checking in with you.
It's brilliant in its simplicity.
This systematic approach is paired with the concept the guide calls out under making the training fun and rewarding. We talked earlier about finding the dog's currency, but the guide implies we need to actually control the supply chain of that currency. It suggests keeping the most amazing treats or toys exclusive to recall practice.
The principle of economic scarcity. This is a game changer.
Tell me more about that.
Well, if you discover that your dog goes absolutely out of their mind for a specific brand of freeze-dried salmon, or maybe a real rabbit fur tug toy, you remove that item from their daily life entirely.
They don't just get it for being a good boy in the living room.
Never. They never get it for sitting. They never get it just for looking cute in the kitchen. That item goes into a locked vault.
And the only key to the vault is the new recall word.
Yes. When they hear that specific auditory cue, they know the vault is opening. The value of the reward is amplified tenfold because he is rare. It prevents inflation.
Oh, I love that term, inflation.
If a dog has free access to hot dogs all day, the hot dog loses its power to pull them away from a high-value distraction like a running squirrel. But if the recall word guarantees an exclusive, scarce resource, the motivation to return absolutely skyrockets.
This level of structure requires a lot of discipline from the humans involved, which brings us to the guide's point about maintaining consistency across the board. It isn't just about the primary owner being consistent, it's about the entire environment. The guide insists that the whole family must use the exact same cues.
And I see this breakdown constantly in households.
Oh, I bet. Dogs are basically exceptional pattern recognition machines, right?
They are. They are constantly trying to decode the rules of their environment to access resources.
Right.
But if the pattern is chaotic, the machine breaks down.
Right, so if the husband uses the word here with a deep voice and gives a piece of chicken, and then the wife says come in a high-pitched voice with just a pat on the head, and the kids just whistle and run in the opposite direction,
Total chaos.
the dog isn't being stubborn when it ignores them. It's taking a multiple-choice test in a foreign language. It's facing a corrupted data set.
The dog is experiencing cognitive overload. The rules are changing depending on the human, the room, and the time of day. When faced with conflicting information, a dog's default response is to opt out of the interaction entirely.
They just shut down.
They will choose the clearest, most predictable reward available, which is usually the environment itself. The squirrel doesn't change the rules.
Ah, that's a great point.
So the household has to operate like a unified front. Same word, same tone, same reward criteria every single time until the behavior is bulletproof.
And if you implement all of this, the new cue, the long leash, the exclusive locked vault rewards, the family consistency, and the dog is still blowing past you to chase deer, the guide offers a final diagnostic step.
Seeking professional help.
Yeah, knowing when to hire a certified trainer or behaviorist. I imagine at a certain point, we are just blind to our own mechanical errors.
We really are. Dog training is heavily reliant on micro-timing and body language. An owner might be saying the right word and holding the right treat, but if they are leaning slightly forward with stiff shoulders, their body language is projecting a threat to the dog.
Even if they're holding a hot dog.
Even then, a dog will read the threatening posture and ignore the verbal cue. A professional observer can spot that disconnect in 3 seconds. They can fix the timing of the reward delivery. They bridge the gap between the owner's intention and the dog's perception.
So it's really all about mechanics and software programming. But there is a massive hardware component to this puzzle that the guide dedicates its entire final section to. We have to talk about the genetics of recall.
We can program the software all day, but the operating system the dog was born with fundamentally dictates how easily that software installs.
I love that analogy. The guide section on the best dog breeds for training the recall command highlights 6 specific breeds. It prefaces this by clarifying that all dogs can learn, but these breeds have a distinct genetic edge.
They have a huge head start.
To truly understand why, we have to look past their modern roles as pets and dig into the historical jobs they were engineered to perform.
We are looking at selective breeding over centuries, which physically alters the neurochemical reward systems in these dogs' brains. They are quite literally wired to find different activities inherently satisfying.
Let's walk through them. The guide kicks off the list with the Border Collie. It describes them as highly intelligent herders that thrive on mental stimulation and obey commands right away.
If you've ever watched a sheepdog trial, it literally looks like telepathy between the dog and the handler.
The Border Collie is the absolute pinnacle of the herding group. For hundreds of years on the moors of Scotland and England, they were bred to manage livestock over vast, rugged distances. But a crucial distinction here is that a herding dog does not operate independently like a livestock guardian dog would.
They aren't just left alone with the sheep.
No, a herding dog's entire biological purpose is to manipulate the movement of sheep in partnership with the shepherd.
They are an extension of the human's will. Exactly. They are bred for hyperbidability. Their brain is flooded with endorphins, not just from chasing the sheep, but from receiving the micro-directions from the human.
So the command itself feels good to them.
Yes. A border collie checking in with its owner isn't an interruption of its fun. It is the core mechanism of its satisfaction. They want to know, do I move them left? Do I flank right? Do I bring them to you?
They crave the micromanagement.
They do. Because they are genetically desperate for the next instruction, the act of returning to the human, the source of the instructions, is naturally heavily reinforced by their own biology.
That makes recall feel less like a command and more like fulfilling their life's purpose. It's built in. The next 2 breeds on the list shift from the pastures to the wetlands. We have the Labrador Retriever and the Golden Retriever.
2 of the most popular dogs in the world.
For good reason. The guide notes the lab's fetching instinct naturally supports returning, and the Golden's preference to stay close to their families.
Here we transition from the psychology of herding to the psychology of retrieving. These breeds were developed to work alongside hunters. Their job was incredibly complex. Sit quietly while guns fire, mark visually where a bird falls. navigate through water or dense brush to find it, pick it up with a soft mouth so as not to damage the meat, and then, this is the critical part, return it directly to the hand of the hunter.
The return is literally built into the name of the breed, retriever.
The delivery is the climax of their behavioral sequence. Think about a hound. A hound might find a scent and follow for miles until it corners the prey. The hound's job ends at the tree.
Right, they just howl until the human catches up.
Exactly. But a retriever's job ends at the human. They possess a deep genetic gravity that pulls them back to the center. When you throw a ball, a retriever's brain is flooded with dopamine during the chase, but the sequence isn't complete until the delivery is made.
It's like an unfinished loop for them otherwise.
It is. And you can leverage that genetic gravity immensely in recall training. Even without a physical object, returning to the human feels inherently correct to their nervous system.
It's fascinating how different the internal motivations are, even though the end result coming back looks identical to us in the park.
The hardware is just different.
The guide then swings back to the herding group with the Australian Shepherd. And it drops a really fun piece of trivia here. They were actually developed in America, particularly the Western United States, not Australia.
That's a great little historical quirk.
Yeah. They were bred to herd sheep and cattle, and the guide highlights their intense desire to work with their owners.
The Australian Shepherd shares that same foundational herding software as the Border Collie, but often with a slightly more robust physical style suited for cattle. But the psychological profile is very similar. They view the human as the ultimate team captain. They want to be on the squad. They're intensely bonded, highly active dogs that find security in proximity to the work. If you make recall a job, a task that requires their sharp intelligence, an Aussie will execute it with incredible precision because they are desperate for employment.
That brings us to number 5 on the list, the German Shepherd. The guide describes them as confident working dogs driven by a desire to please, intense loyalty, and protection. We see them everywhere in police work, search and rescue, military operations. How does their utility background influence their recall?
The German Shepherd is a brilliant study in selective breeding for versatility. They originated as sheephooters, obviously, hence the name, but Max von Stephanitz, who standardized the breed, aggressively pivoted them toward utility and protection work. They are bred for intense, singular bonds with a handler.
They are the ultimate loyal soldiers.
A German Shepherd's recall is driven less by the desire for the next task, like the Border Collie, and more by an overwhelming instinct to maintain the integrity and safety of their pack unit.
Oh, so it's about security.
They are genetically wired for situational awareness and protection. A German Shepherd naturally wants to know where you are. They tend to establish a perimeter around their human. When called, their return is fueled by that deep-seated loyalty and a protective drive to regroup with the handler.
Which is exactly why they excel in environments with high chaos, like search and rescue. They can tune out the noise to focus on the handler.
Precisely.
Finally, the list includes a breed that often surprises people who only associate them with elaborate haircuts. The Standard Poodle.
I love talking about poodles.
The guide emphasizes their athleticism, agility, high intelligence, and love for brain games.
The modern perception of the poodle as merely a pampered companion dog completely ignores their rugged history. The word poodle comes from the German word pudel, meaning to splash in water.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they were originally fierce, highly capable water retrievers. They share the exact same genetic foundation for retrieving as the lab and the golden.
So, under the fancy groom, there is a hardcore hunting dog waiting for a job.
Absolutely. Combine that innate retrieving instinct, that biological drive to deliver to the human, with a level of intelligence that rivals the Border Collie, and you have a dog that thrives on complex problem solving. Recall training for a poodle is a mental puzzle that they find highly engaging.
This breakdown of genetics is incredibly illuminating. It explains why my friend's golden retriever seems to check in automatically while another friend is struggling constantly with their dog.
That's all about what's under the hood.
But this raises an urgent question for a huge portion of the people listening. What if you don't own one of these 6 breeds?
A very fair question.
What if you adopted a fiercely independent rescue dog? Or you own a beagle, a breed engineered to put its nose to the ground and follow a scent for 5 miles without ever looking back at the hunter. Or a husky, bred to run relentlessly for hours in one direction. Are these owners doomed to never experience off-leash freedom?
It is the most critical question we can ask, and the guide is very clear in his conclusion. It states that despite the massive advantages these specific breeds have, any dog of any breed or mix can learn a reliable recall.
Any dog. But the degree of difficulty changes drastically, right?
The principles of learning theory do not change. Classical conditioning, operant conditioning, positive reinforcement, these are universal laws of canine cognition. A beagle learns through the exact same mechanisms as a border collie.
Okay, so what's the catch?
What changes is the threshold of motivation and the intensity of the competing environmental factors.
Ah. If a border collie's biological default is to look at the human, and a beagle's biological default is to lick the rabbit trail, the owner of the beagle has to work 10 times harder to become more interesting than the rabbit.
You have to find a reward so astronomically valuable that it temporarily overrides hundreds of years of selective breeding for independence.
That sounds exhausting.
It's a commitment. It might require months of work on a long leash instead of weeks. It might require extreme environmental management, never allowing the dog off leash in areas heavily populated with prey animals until the recall is flawless in controlled settings. You are fighting against their operating system, but with immense patience, perfect timing, and the right currency, you can absolutely install the software.
So, synthesizing everything we've pulled from Simon Tracy's guide today, the most profound realization for me is that recall is not just a trick. It isn't a command you teach on a rainy Saturday and check off a list.
Not at all. It is a living, breathing communication system. It is a daily practice that requires constant maintenance.
Right?
It demands a pristine, positive association with a specific auditory cue. It requires a deep understanding of economic motivation to outcompete the environment. It demands absolute, unwavering consistency from every human in the household.
And the emotional control.
Yes. Perhaps most demandingly, it requires extreme emotional regulation from the owner when things go wrong, ensuring we never punish the dog for making the right choice, no matter how long it took them to make it.
It is an incredible amount of work. The long lines, the high-value exclusive treats, the stoic emotional control. But for anyone listening who is in the thick of this training, the payoff is unparalleled.
It changes everything.
A reliable recall removes the anxiety of the outdoors. It replaces the panic of a slip leash with a profound structural trust. There is a very specific, quiet joy in watching your dog run freely through a field, knowing with absolute certainty that when you call their name, the bond you've built is stronger than any instinct pulling them away. They are safe, and you are connected.
It is the ultimate metric of the relationship. In a world full of intoxicating smells and wild animals, the dog calculates all their options and decides that returning to your side is the most valuable, rewarding place they could possibly be.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over, building on the sheer depth of communication we've uncovered today. We've spent this time analyzing how surgically our dogs read our tone, our micro-expressions, and our consistency.
They miss nothing.
We've discussed how they can instantly detect when our frustration poisons a cue, and how they use that subtle data to decide if we are a safe harbor or a threat in the park. So, if a dog's nervous system is that finely tuned to our emotional state just to play a game of fetch or decide whether to come back, it really makes you wonder what else they are absorbing.
We broadcast an immense amount of nonverbal data every second of the day.
Exactly. When we are sitting quietly on the couch, stressed about work or anxious about the future, our breathing shifts, our posture changes, our heart rate alters. If they are reading us with that level of forensic accuracy outdoors, they are undoubtedly reading our internal emotional weather indoors, often long before we even recognize it ourselves.
They're incredible barometers.
They might be the most accurate mirrors of our own psychological state that we have. Just something to think about the next time your dog is quietly watching you from across the room. Until next time, thanks for taking the deep dive with us.